Not like what it looks today, for sure. So to start with, but having said that, I think actually at a very strange time to ask a question like this, because there are a lot of things that are being thrown at us while I'm talking to different architects to come online or to be part of certain sessions and things like that. There are concerns being voiced about what is the future of our architecture going to be, with all this social distancing that is required or whatever. And one is wondering, until now, in fact, my team has put down a note also where we are saying that until now we were talking about how architecture can bring people together, and here we are talking about architecture and design being required to keep people apart, which is kind of heartbreaking in a sense. And I hope this is, I hope and I think it will be a passing phase and we will get back to connecting physically as well rather than socially. Having said that, I think while I said architecture shouldn't be the way it is, I think what is, I'd like to, that was in jest, but I think over the last few years, been interacting with a lot of practices. Now, even today, when we ask a lot of non-architects or even architects for that matter to name architects they know across the country, there are very few names that come by. And we are whether it's our juries through Ethos, NASA, wherever, we tend to have a image of who should be on the jury because the person is kind of known. But there's some fabulous work happening out there, and I wish we should be, maybe as NASA, as part of your publication also, you could look at probably highlighting some of that work as well. And you have a network across India, and you can easily source good work from all those places. And I think the more we publicize that kind of work, the more likely that the vision we have for our Indian architecture is likely to change. There are a lot of people doing fantastic work out there. And what is the vision for the utopian Indian architecture is a difficult thing to say, but I think it should be something that is of our country, for our country, and maybe by our country as well, if possible. So that's your treading on glass is what I would say just now. But so that you need to look at it from, I'm not getting into whether that project is suitable or not. I think what we need to really look at is whether that project is required or not in the first place. So at this point of time, with what we are facing, certainly not. At any point of time, I think whether it is required or not, I don't know if adequate study was done. We'll find out whether it is required. So I think that's where it needs to begin, rather than be a knee-jerk reaction that someone said someone wants something and someone doesn't. So if there could be adequate studies on the need for it, the feasibility of it, the site for it, whether it needs to be where it is, can it be elsewhere? These are things that should have been questioned before we got to whether, and then of course the process on the choice and all, I'm not getting into it all. That's the second step. But the first step itself on, the need for it, and if yes, substantiate it with adequate process is something that I would say. In its current form, for sure, no. In any form, I'm not sure it will be possible, because there are two different things you're talking about there. Architects Act is about regulation of the profession, but the benefit is actually directed to public at large, and not so much the safeguarding the interests of the profession itself. So I'm not sure if that would be addressed if the Architects Act is modified. I'm not sure. My time was certainly very good. So yes, there have been ups and downs. It has seen different kinds of iterations happening in terms of the quality of students as well over time. And I think by now, maybe, I hope some kind of a study has been done to see what really happened. So when I know that when only math was required, we had a lot more in terms of admissions, you had a lot more because it meant that people with BCom could also join architecture.
Yeah.
The BA with math could also join architecture. And then we went back to saying science, physics is also required, right? Now, my problem is that I don't know if the level of math that we do at class 12 is required to do architecture. Can we have a math 1 and a math 2? Or can we have a qualifying math exam which becomes mandatory for you to pass, or you get a 50% in class 12, or you take this mandatory math exam which is of a much lower level, which is adequate for you to look at. So I'm talking about even before we get into architectural education, the kind of students that come in. Because if you make math of this standard that is required, then you probably are cutting out a whole bunch of kids who are actually got this artistic bent of mind, but are not great at math, and hence they kind of get left behind. So that's my first comment on the kind of students that are coming in. As far as after that, what happens, again, depends on, tweaking your education system based on the kind of students you have. Because if you're, in those times, if the science base was kind of weak, it meant that your whether architectural structures or any of that is required, how do they handle stuff like that, all that, and how do you dovetail? So I think a lot of work needs to be done on integrating the learning also. It's like you have different streams happening in college, and each one is doing their own thing very often and not really dovetailing into each other, which I think would be nice for it to happen. Also, I think colleges at the end of the day are looking at producing individuals who are all alike, not realizing that it's important in our field particularly to allow specifics to flourish. I might be really great at something, and it's important to allow me to flourish at that and not do very well at the other. And so I think while I believe that education needs to be democratic, even architectural education needs to be democratic, where everybody is having an equal chance, but it should not be cookie cutter type where you're expecting everybody to be good at all the things that you're being taught, but because eventually you're not doing all of it. Some of you are going to be great at design, some of you are going to actually get into probably writing, and it's okay for us to be all of that. There's no shame in being not being a designer. Very often we have this thing that all of us who get out should be absolutely looking at only being architects, quote unquote designers. It's okay to do the other stuff as well. And I think our education system needs to encourage a bit of all. So interesting that you say it. I was part of a committee, I think 3 years ago, of the Council of Architecture, which kind of crafted a syllabus for 11 and 12 pre-university architecture. So it kind of was it covered a bit of what you did in the first year. It introduced you to architects, architecture, what it is, and so on. But I don't think it got accepted by the MHRD. I'm not sure what the status of that is. I don't know if it has been included in the syllabus. Having said that, I'd like you to go in fact, you can help us with it also. We've launched a little segment called Building Stories on ASEDGE. Building Stories is about building stories through architecture. So building being the pun on it. So we did workshops in college and schools as well, where I'm giving you an example where there is this thing, there is this story, fairy tale, which talks about Rapunzel let down your hair. And Rapunzel is sitting in a tower, right? And we question, what if she was not in a tower? What if she was in a dungeon? Would she have had long hair? Would she have had long hands instead? So we're going back to school kids, telling them these little stories, then coming back and telling them what is a tower. Where was the first tower probably built? Why are towers used? How is a tower in India as against a tower in Italy? So we have created content like that online. Be grateful to partner with NASA India if you can get each member of NASA to get one non-architecture or a class 11, 12, class 6, 7 student to take one of these sessions with us. So maybe you will also be doing your bit to get. So yes, it is important for students well before they join architecture to know about this field. So you have people who really wanting to be architects who actually come into this field. I went back to the school that I was in and did a session. Incidentally, I met this girl at a IIA NatCon 3 years ago. She came up to me and said, Future Foundation School, so and so year, you came and spoke to our class 12 kids on what architecture is, and I took architecture because of that, and here I am today. I went to ABIT Cuttack, PMCA Cuttack, and I'm a successful architect today. And I felt really, really happy that a talk that I gave got her interested in architecture and So if you look at the judgment, it's gone by the letter of the law. So they have just looked at what the act says, what the what the person is contested, and it is a judgment that is definitely a matter of worry. If it is seen as a judgment in isolation, it is a matter of worry if it is allowed to be. But it could be, if, like I think at our session also, Architect Habib Khan said that it is looked at as a new beginning to fight our cause with the lawmakers in general to get that act amended. It actually could work in our favor. We'll have to go back and say, look, this is what's going to happen. There is no relevance of us if you don't amend that act. And it's essential for you to do it so that our rights are protected. And that's precisely what I'm assuming that the council is going to do now from here. And I think we were there at the session where he's given himself a time frame of 1 year. I like to believe that something could happen in that 1 year. But I'll also have to say that it has been a long struggle. It's not as if every executive committee has tried to, they've called for architects to come and give their suggestions. Amendments have been made. By the time the amendments are suggested amendments are put together, probably either the executive committee moves on or the government changes there. So it has been a kind of an odd situation in that sense. Let's hope this time around things work in our favor and an amendment actually happens. There are a few thoughts I have on what should be looked at also for amendment, which one I think strongly is that there is not enough representation of practicing professionals in the council itself. So the interest of the practicing professionals is not fully represented. Yes, there are 5 members from IIA, 4 members from IIA who get elected from different zones, but very often they also tend to be from academia, need not necessarily be from the profession. And even so, I think IIA also needs to increase its outreach and get more people into its fold so that the representation there is better. I did ask a question on, so there are academics that are represented, which means colleges are represented and faculty interests are represented, and faculty probably also represent student interests, but not in the same manner that students and young architects would represent it. So I had asked whether students can also be part of, can be made to be part of this representation at the council, and being students being not a permanent body in that sense was found to be a little difficult. But today, after thinking on that again, since I'm talking to you, maybe if you're going to be trying to pursue this favor further, is it possible for you guys to ask for a invitee position? I understand that a permanent position is not possible, but an invitee position, whenever there is and maybe NASA can travel on their own costs also if required to the meetings. Those are smaller things that need to be dealt with. But can there be at least 1 or 2 invitee students whenever there's a executive committee, not executive committee meeting, but a Council of Architecture member meeting? Yeah, member meeting. Is it possible for that to happen, or at least once in a way? If not on every meeting, but once in 6 months or once in 3 months, can there be representation from your side? So your your side of the story is also heard, so that you can go back and tell the rest of the students who are right now extremely paranoid, because I'm getting a lot of messages also after this judgment saying, why are we studying? हमको पढ़ने की क्या जरूरत है? हमको 5 साल करने की क्या जरूरत है? And so on. Those will be put at rest by your interactions with the council as well. So that's the suggestion I have to the possible. One is, of course, see how you can join hands with different organizations doing things. We are coming up with an initiative very soon also, where we are calling for ideas. So maybe you could help with that. I don't know if you. So you are looking at how have you understood the Architects Act yourself? How many students have understood it? Because sometimes when they're writing in, I realize that they've not understood it well enough, and they're going off completely on a tangent. So an awareness campaign of sorts on that also is something, especially on segments that are relevant to your constituency, is something that you could possibly arrange for. Maybe maybe have a debriefing on the Architects Act itself, a presentation, or somebody who's an expert on the Act actually speaks to all of you and tells you what it actually entails, and then you can come back and think of what else for the future. These are things that are essential for your students to know before they get into the next step of trying to understand what that court judgment was about, or what the amendments are likely to be, and so on. So I don't know if there is something that's being done on that.